When London learned the price of influence, it began with negotiations so subtle that most witnesses failed to grasp its significance. A handful of powerful merchants sat across from royal envoys in a chamber dimly lit by candles, each side speaking in measured tones, each word carrying far more weight than its calm delivery suggested. They were not discussing goods or voyages. They were discussing influence, how much it cost, who could grant it, and who would control it. London at the time was a city stretching beyond its old boundaries. Trade expanded, politics tangled with commerce, and the crown's financial needs deepened with every foreign conflict. Power was no longer determined solely by birth or title. It now depended on access to capital, to information, to the networks that threaded through counting houses and coffee houses alike. In this shifting world, influence became a currency as valuable as silver. To understand why this moment mattered, we must return to a period when authority was beginning to drift away from monarchs and toward those who could fund their ambitions. The crown needed money, and the merchants who possessed it saw an opportunity not just to profit, but to shape policy. Influence, once a byproduct of wealth, was becoming a commodity in its own right. The reveal began when the merchants offered support in exchange for more than repayment. They sought privileges, trade rights, exemptions, access to negotiations once reserved for nobility. Their proposal was bold. It challenged centuries of hierarchy. Yet the crown, facing mounting pressures, considered it. Privilege could be granted. Loyalty could be bought. Influence could be exchanged, if the price was right. This quiet negotiation marked the beginning of an extraordinary shift. Power flowed in new directions, carried not by decree, but by ledger entries and carefully crafted agreements. The merchants, once merely ambitious traders, began shaping decisions that reached far beyond the docks and markets they knew so well. But beneath this emerging partnership, tension stirred. Influence once given could be taken. Power once shared could be contested. And London was entering a period where the price of influence would rise far faster than anyone expected. As influence began circulating through London like currency, the city's power structure shifted in subtle but unmistakable ways. Decisions that once moved slowly through formal channels now took shape in private rooms, guided by those who understood how leverage worked. Merchants who had secured access to royal circles found doors opening effortlessly. Their rivals, shut out from these networks, felt the ground tilt beneath them. What made this transformation dangerous was not its speed, but its invisibility. No laws were rewritten. No proclamations announced a change in order. Yet policies began reflecting commercial priorities with uncanny precision. Trade routes aligned with merchant interests. Taxes bent around financial realities. Diplomatic stances softened or hardened depending on who stood ready to fund the next campaign. Influence had become operational. This new reality bred conflict almost immediately. Traditional elites, nobles, guild leaders, court officials, recognized that authority was slipping from their grasp. They had power by heritage, but merchants had power by liquidity, and liquidity moved faster. Arguments erupted in council chambers where old titles clashed with new numbers. The old guard accused financiers of buying the state. The financiers countered that they were stabilizing it. As competition intensified, influence itself became something to be measured and traded. Merchants compared outcomes. Tracked favors granted, noted which investments yielded political return. Alliances formed not around ideology, but around effectiveness. Those who delivered results gained more access. Those who failed faded quickly. London's power dynamics began to resemble a marketplace, volatile, competitive, and unforgiving. The tension deepened when smaller merchants realized they could not compete. Without capital large enough to sway policy, they were locked out of decisions that shaped their futures. Resentment grew across the city. Some accused the powerful houses of monopolizing influence, just as they monopolized trade. Others warned that a system built on purchased access would eventually undermine trust in governance itself. Behind closed doors, the crown struggled to maintain balance. Accepting financial support brought relief, but also dependence. Each concession granted to merchants weakened the monarchy's independence. Advisors whispered concerns that the throne was trading authority for solvency. yet refusing support risked immediate crisis. Influence, once accepted, proved difficult to refuse again. The conflict sharpened when rival merchant factions began competing openly for royal favor. They undercut one another, spread damaging information, and maneuvered to discredit opponents in court. Political struggles that once unfolded through debate now unfolded through balance sheets. Influence wars left casualties, ruined reputations, collapsed firms, and policies shaped by rivalry rather than reason. London was learning a hard lesson. Once influence becomes a commodity, it obeys the laws of markets. It concentrates, it inflates, and it creates winners and losers long before consequences are understood. The city stood on the edge of a deeper reckoning, one where the cost of influence would be tested against the stability of the system that sold it. The struggle over influence reached a dangerous intensity as London's political and financial worlds began to overlap almost completely. What had once been a quiet exchange of favors now hardened into an unspoken rule. Nothing of consequence moved forward without financial backing. Policy followed capital. Access followed leverage. And those without either found themselves invisible. The first fractures appeared inside the crown itself. Advisors split into rival camps, each aligned, openly or quietly, with different merchant houses. Recommendations conflicted. Strategies stalled. Decisions reversed without explanation. The court became a reflection of the city's competition, its unity weakened by the same forces reshaping London's markets. Authority no longer flowed smoothly from the throne. It fragmented under pressure. Beyond the palace, the consequences spread quickly. Laws intended to regulate trade arrived unevenly enforced. Some firms received exemptions. Others faced sudden scrutiny. Guild leaders accused the crown of favoritism, while merchants insisted outcomes were merely the result of efficiency and foresight. Trust eroded as citizens sensed that fairness had been replaced by negotiation. The conflict escalated when two powerful merchant factions clashed over a single royal decision, one that would determine control of the lucrative route and influence foreign relations for years. Both sides mobilized their resources. Loans were offered, debts were forgiven, information was leaked at precisely calculated moments. What looked like a political debate was, in truth, a financial duel fought behind closed doors. As the rivalry intensified, the costs multiplied. Markets reacted to rumors before facts. Investors hesitated, unsure which faction would prevail. Foreign partners questioned London's reliability as policy shifted with financial tides. The city's growing reputation as a stable center of commerce began to crack, undermined by the very mechanisms that had fueled its rise. The breaking strain came when one faction overreached, pushing for influence so aggressively that it triggered public backlash. Evidence of undue pressure surfaced. Accusations of corruption spread beyond the city into Parliament and the streets. Confidence faltered. For the first time, the price of influence seemed too high. London now faced a reckoning. If influence could be bought, then governance itself risked becoming unstable. If power obeyed market logic, then it could crash just as violently. The city had learned how influence moved. Now it had to confront what happened when that movement went unchecked. And as tensions coiled tighter, one question loomed over everything. Could London afford a system where power followed money alone? Or was it already paying the cost? The reckoning arrived when the machinery of influence finally ground against the limits of tolerance. What had long operated in shadow was dragged into the open by scandal, rivalry, and exhaustion. Parliamentary inquiries were convened. Testimonies contradicted one another. Financial records, once guarded like state secrets, surfaced in fragments that revealed how deeply money had shaped decisions meant to serve the public. The climax unfolded not in a single dramatic collapse, but in a series of irreversible shifts. The crown, alarmed by how dependent it had become, moved to reclaim distance from the city's most powerful houses. Privileges were reviewed. Access was narrowed. Informal channels that once guaranteed swift outcomes slowed under new scrutiny. Influence did not disappear, but it lost its illusion of invisibility. Merchants who had thrived on proximity to power felt the change immediately. Deals took longer. Promises required documentation. Outcomes were no longer assured by reputation alone. Some adapted, learning to operate within clearer boundaries. Others faltered, exposed by a system that now demanded transparency, where secrecy had once been currency. For the city, the moment was sobering. London had learned that influence, when traded freely, behaves like any other market force. It concentrates, it distorts incentives, and without limits, it undermines the very stability it claims to support. What once seemed like efficiency now looked like fragility. The resolution did not come from eliminating influence, but from redefining it. New norms emerged, ones that separated financial support from political authority more clearly than before. The state retained access to capital, but under firmer terms. The city retained its role, but with reduced ability to bend outcomes unseen. Power became slower, more deliberate, and harder to purchase outright. London emerged altered, but not weakened. The city understood something essential. Influence is unavoidable in any system built on ambition. But when its price rises unchecked, the cost is paid not in money, but in trust. Stability depends not on denying influence, but on containing it within structures strong enough to survive it. The lesson endured quietly, shaping how London balanced power and capital in the centuries that followed. Influence would always move. The question was no longer whether it existed, but whether the city could afford to forget what it costs. When